been with us, you've seen the bus.
The whim of a madman. I like that.
Well, good morning, friends. Mark Holmes here, of course, with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, as well as the Funky Chicken. And as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. I want to reflect today. Tomorrow is going to be crazy, okay? It's free agent frenzy at starting 12 o'clock tomorrow. I will be on the road first thing in the morning. My dad has, let me say thank you all for the thoughts, the prayers, and everything for my dad as well as my father-in-law. My dad has a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning, and after that, I will be live streaming Free Agent Frenzy. We'll just spend the day following the big moves that are happening in the NFL. So I'm not sure what time I'll be done. If I'll be there at 12, probably not. Probably be more like 1 or after. But we will be covering all this because this is going to be different for us. This is going to be different for us. Although I don't necessarily see the Cowboys making the huge free agent signings, like some teams will go out there and do. But I think the Cowboys will be doing the second, third tier type signings to try and fill in holes, so that way they'll be in a good position to draft. And that would be the wise thing. A lot of times you end up putting all your eggs in one basket, and it ends up being kind of a bust. And typically when the Cowboys have made moves for the lights-out player, it hasn't worked out. When I think about them trading for Joey Galloway, that one, and that might not have been Joey Galloway's fault that he got injured, hurt his knee. But when they've gone and made trades for like Roy Williams or and so on, it just has not seemed to be well. Sometimes it's some moves that people kind of go, meh. They're the ones that have been the most beneficial to the team. And so my thing is strength with numbers. Now the Cowboys, their strength with numbers is usually the cheapest guys. If we get 20 of those guys on the roster, 3 or 4 of them will be okay. Greg Lawson was a great example of that, a guy who played a lot better than what you expected, and a guy I hope that we can find a way to bring back. But I've seen too many times where guys have, swung for the fences on Albert Haynesworth's, and they get that big fat check, and they sit on their big fat ass and do absolutely nothing. And so this is where it's a delicate balance. The Cowboys, my God, so much has changed in the last month. And I'll get back to that after I just I want to throw this in here a little bit. When Harold Landry was first released a couple of days ago, when you looked at his numbers, the numbers are eye-popping. But all of a sudden, Harold Landry has gotten trashed. He's gotten trashed. The guy who's had 19 sacks in the last 2 seasons, okay? I looked at him and I said, you know what? I'd like to get that kind of production and stuff from him. A guy who's averaged about 9 sacks a season throughout his career. He did have the ACL injury in 2022, but the 2 seasons since then still played really, really good. And so now all of a sudden you're hearing people saying that he kind of checks out of games, that his win rate isn't as great as you would like, and so on. So I'm going to read this. This is from Packers Wire of their ratings about him. And you're getting a lot of people that are all of a sudden get on here. And sometimes I wonder because we hear this sometimes with draft picks, where people will go through and they'll all of a sudden trash and the guy will start falling. And you wonder, is this actually true? Or is this a narrative being set because we want to get him, but we can't get him because he's up there so high? If we can dirty him a little bit, and maybe some other people will all of a sudden listen, that maybe it's an opportunity for us to get him at a better price. So there is a lot of that goes on where people will trash players so that way they have a chance to get them. You'll see a lot of draftees that will drop because of rumors that'll get started. So here it is. Okay. Until free agency, Packers Wire will run through potential options, continuing today with recently released edge rusher Harold Landry in an attempt to identify the pros and cons of each potential target for them. Releasing Landry, who has for 3 straight seasons at least 9 sacks, saved the Titans over $10 million in cap space, 25 by being cut. Let's dig into the pros and cons of Packers going after Landry. Landry is experienced and consistently productive edge rusher, a premium position where Packers will likely add this offseason. His 17-game average over his career, almost 9 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, and 18 quarterback hits. After missing the 22 season with a torn ACL, Landry returned to 19.5 sacks, 29 tackles for loss, and 38 quarterback hits over the last 2 seasons. And he played in all 34 games. The major injury didn't slow him down. In fact, Landry was on the field almost 75% of snaps in 23 and 83% of snaps in 24. Well, damn. You hear that, and that's when I looked at the numbers, I was like, well, damn. Sounds pretty good. In 6 of his 7 seasons, Landry has played at least 15 games. He's had 1 major injury, but otherwise been durable throughout a season. Between 19 and 21, Landry played 90% of the defensive snaps. So this guy doesn't get off the field. He plays almost every snap. According to Next Gen Stats, Landry has produced at least 40 pressures during all 6 of his healthy seasons. Landry is a reliable finisher. His pressure rate overall isn't high, but he's consistently producing sacks and quarterback hits over his career. Landry was excellent against the run in 24 per Pro Football Focus. His 82.3 run defense grade was a career high, and he finished with 26 run stops, ranking 6th among all edge rushers last year. Maturing as a player. Okay, so wait a minute. He's a good run stopper. 6th among all edge rushers last season. Sounds kind of like DeMarcus Lawrence. Maturing as a player, Landry has found his ways of impacting the game in a positive way. Landry is aging, but is still quick to get off the ball. Next Gen Stats clocked him at 0.72 seconds last year, a career best. Okay. He's producing. Let's go to the pros and cons. Landry turns 29 in June, so he's not the prototypical young ascending player the Packers like in free agency. And given his production at premium position, he'll likely be coveted and eventually highly played player on the open market. Paying big for an older player is always risky. While Landry has piled up pressures, his quarterback pressure rate has actually never been higher than 12.2% in the season.
Oh shit! Oh shit!
Next Gen Stats for comparison, Rashawn Gray pressure rate was 13.4 last season. Landry's volume pressure numbers might have been more to do with more of being an every down player who rarely comes off the field more than pressure talent beating blocks and disrupting quarterbacks. Pro Football Focus, Landry in 24 was worst as a pass rusher. In fact, Pro Football Focus viewed Landry as one of the NFL's worst edge rushers. His pass rush win rate was only 4.8, ranking dead last among 64 qualifying edge rushers. Pro Football Focus has him only at 30 pressures on 423 rushing snaps. It's certainly possible he's running out of gas as an every down edge rusher. His quick pressure drop rate to a career low 15 and 24, and his all-time pressure metrics jumps to 3.11 seconds, highest of his career. All right. So, a couple things I'm going to say when I look at this and think about this is if you are playing every single down, and you're a run stopper as well as a pass rusher, then your first thing is stop the run. Which means, when in like depending on the type of defense, if you're a read and react, okay, read and react, you're getting a hold of the guy, trying to figure out what he's doing. Oh, it's a pass rush. Now I got to go ahead and make my move. If it is you're a pass rush specialist, you come in for third downs. You know it's a pass rush. My job is I'm not stopping the run. I'm getting upfield to rush the passer. Because now you have the advantage of knowing I'm pass rushing versus run stop first and then pass rush. That could skew some of the numbers. The other part I'll say on this is, too, the Tennessee Titans, more times than not, were probably losing games, in which case they were probably being run on more because teams would have a lead, in which case you were kind of getting stuck into they're going to run the ball. They're not going to risk the biscuit. We're behind. We suck. Which also kind of gets you into trying to stop the run instead of worrying about the pass. Third thing I'll say is if you're out there 80 to 90% of the snaps, you will get tired. You will get tired. And we know how our defense plays when the offense can't do anything. They might start out having a few good stops and things. At some point, they run out of gas. So I don't know that he is that bad. He's still getting sacks. He's still getting quarterback hits. He's still getting pressures. Now, unfortunately, a guy like that with those numbers probably will get a big contract. I believe he's coming off of $24 million contract a year. So I don't know what the number will be. I don't think it'll be 24 at 29. But then again, sometimes people reach, and as Stephen Jones says, you hate to play great money for good players. You know, it will be inflated because it is a free agent. But there are guys that could definitely help us, at least in the trenches. Hargrave, who had the torn tricep, which is healed, is getting a little bit older, but that would be some great defensive interior help. That would be some of the best help we've had in forever, as opposed to us going for the Linval Josephs, who are really old, or the Hankins that are really old. That would be a true stud, or a Jonathan Allen. Those are kind of players that could definitely help us in free agency. And I'm hoping that we actually do some things. I don't necessarily say that we have to have all, top free agents. And in my mind, for a lot of people, they say, don't pay Rico $6 million. I look at that and say that's 15th highest in the running back market right now. Rico numbers for what he was working with, as bad as our offense was, as bad as our offensive line, his numbers actually are really, really good. I wouldn't mind bringing him back. But if we can fill in the holes and just look and say, we're going to do one major upgrade. For me, that would be the wide receiver. If we can get a stud wide receiver, Devontae Adams, I would love to be able to say, let's bring him here and upgrade that position. And if we can fill in some of the holes, get a Jonathan Allen or a Hargrave on the defensive line, those two moves alone would make a night and day difference. And I'm not going to get greedy and say, let's get 3 or 4, great players. I would love for us to go ahead and basically say we are trying to really compete with the Commanders and the Eagles and really do something right now while we still can, while we still have Micah Parsons young, and while we still have Dak Prescott upright, before it just gets to be too late. Because at some point down the road, we are going to have to reset the clock and start all over. But right now, you got an opportunity. But what a difference a month makes, because we were knee-deep in woe is me, this franchise is broken. I'm not saying it's not broken anymore, but when you think about, first we thought Mike McCarthy was coming back, and my God, I wonder how it would be. What would the team be doing if Mike McCarthy had returned? Would they have flipped all the triggers that they did to do what they're doing right now? Or would it have been the usual, treating Mike McCarthy the way we've been treating him? I don't know. I honestly don't know. All I do know is right now they're doing things differently than they have. We have $54 million of cap space. On Wednesday, another 18 will come in because the rollover will be added to it. And if they actually get Micah Parsons done, that's some more money right there. We'll have $90 million to play with. Hopefully some of that money will be earmarked for getting Deron Bland locked down and Tyler Smith, so we're not worrying about those next year. But also doing everything we can to get this team, to get this star shining bright again. But when you think about Mike McCarthy leaving and the way we went about getting coaches and some of the coaches we talked to and seemingly getting doors slammed in our face and then having shoddy shots become the head coach, the outlook looks totally different. Now, we'll see how it all works out, but I'm going to take you back to when we found out that that Mike McCarthy was let go.
This is going to land in your lap, right? When we were in Dallas this year for a couple of games, look, the topic has always been out there about Jerry and Mike and what might happen, and now they've chosen to go in their separate ways. I don't think Mike will be out of a job for too long, but this job's as coveted as any because you're going to run the Dallas Cowboys. In what direction do you think they ought to look?
Well, I thought Mike McCarthy would be the head coach, so this is a bit of a surprise for me today that he's not going to be. And what went into those conversations that Schefter talked about, I'm not exactly sure, but it suggests that there's not a real plan. I mean, and the fact that they haven't had the opportunity to maybe interview a Ben Johnson and some of these others, Aaron Glenn. I think that what Schefter said as far as Kellen Moore being a candidate, that seems logical to me. A guy who has familiarity with the building. He's worked obviously with the Cowboys and with Jerry Jones, and they know each other very well. In fact, when Mike McCarthy got the job, it was told to Mike that Kellen Moore would be the offensive coordinator. So that's how much the Jones family thinks of him. Beyond that, it's hard to imagine. As far as a coveted job, I don't know that that's accurate. I mean, I do think the Cowboys are obviously a high-profile team. Whoever is covered or whoever is head coach of that team is certainly going to draw a lot of attention. But I think most football people that take over as a head coach, they want to do it on their terms.
That's fair.
That's hard to do. And it's, if you take a Dan Campbell, for instance, is Dan Campbell if he's with the Dallas Cowboys? It's hard to imagine that he is. It's hard to imagine that a lot of these coaches might be. So I love the Dallas Cowboys. I played there for 12 years. I wish them well. But to say that it's a coveted job, I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that.
Maybe it's semantics, and let me just be clear. I agree with what you're saying because, Swag, you look at that job, and it's the star, and it's Dallas, and it's all that comes with it. But you're also hamstrung to a degree by the money you've got sunk in a couple of star players, and that you're going to have to pay Mike if you want to keep him. How do you view what that job is?
I agree with Troy. Therein lies – there's a difference in flash and substance.
Cake and
Cowboys
icing.
are flash.
Cake and icing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something we talk about this quite often when we get a chance to sit together and talk. But ultimately, when you look at this job, and I kind of sum this job up in this regard. If the owner is not going to change, are you willing to hire a coach with enough cachet to challenge you on not changing? And it's what's going to be best for the locker room and the guys that's playing on the field. We throw this word distractions around a lot in football. Things are happening, and there's a lot of distractions going on. Distractions are a part of playing in the NFL. That's not singular to any team in the league as far as having distractions. The difference is in Dallas is the guy that makes the decisions creates the distractions. And that is why it's so difficult and why I agree with Troy to say this is a coveted job. You'll take the job because they'll pay you $5-6 million. We human. We understand that. But if you have a plan long-term to win, implement a culture, change the way things are being done, that's something you really have to think about as a coach that's taking this job seriously, knowing that you play it on the margins anyway.
RC, to these points that are being made, because they carry a lot of weight and they make a lot of sense, could that preclude them from getting ultimately a difference-making type of coach?
Well, I do believe it makes it very difficult to get someone who is going to be a culture changer, because that's what normally happens with these teams. When you move on from coaches, you want the culture to be better. You want the chemistry within the locker room to be better, along with the actual X's and O's and the strategic parts of football. That culture is Jerry Jones' culture. So many times when Mike Tomlin comes in and takes over for Coach Cowher in the Pittsburgh Steelers, where the culture was already great, he added his touch to it and he had to make it his own. There is no making the Dallas Cowboys your own as a head coach. It's how do you fall in line and compromise with Jerry Jones being the owner. And to Troy's point, it's a coveted job because it's one of 32. People want to be head coaches in the NFL, and you will have the spotlight and attention on you, but the attention is squarely focused on the general manager and owner most times, and it makes it very difficult to operate in a football-like way.
Jason, they were a rival, we understand. And in the NFC East, everyone's rivals with everyone, which is why I've always loved it. But looking at them from the outside looking in, how did you view their circumstance as it related to Jones and the coach and whatever that was?
I mean, listen, they always had success. I mean, we fought each other hard. It wasn't like we dominated that matchup. I think we actually lost more of them to the Dallas Cowboys, even though organizationally we have more success. And I do think that Jerry, the way the organization is run, it just feels like that's more the issue than it is the coaching. It feels like, especially this offseason, they didn't make the investment in the free agency. They didn't make the moves necessary to really compete. And all of a sudden now McCarthy is kind of being phased out. But I also wonder, what's happened, because it felt like McCarthy was trending towards being back. That's what it certainly sounded like.
I mean, so what has happened? He thought he would.
So what has happened?
And he had support from guys like Parsons that were pretty vocal about it.
So what has happened recently?
I don't know.
Did something happen in those meetings, or does Jerry have a plan that he already knows where he wants to go? Because it feels like you already got this guy coming back. It felt like he was trending there, and all of a sudden it's changed.
I don't think they would have spent the 4 days if there was not a thought that he was going to continue. Yeah. There was something in those conversations. I've been led to believe that potentially it could have been the length of a contract. Never got into the actual terms of what the money would be, but if the contract was going to be a 2-year deal versus a 5-year deal, was that a no-go for Mike McCarthy, or where does it start? I don't know, but somewhere along the lines, what looked to be a conversation that was going to secure Mike for a deal didn't happen.
And it seems like when it comes to players, Jerry always waits to the last minute. In this case, I guess you got to the last minute. It was supposed to be Tuesday, and it didn't, and now it's not. So he goes in a different direction.
I think coaching matters in the NFL. I think we would all agree. I think coaching matters. Players matter.
See it tonight.
We'll leave it right there. But it's amazing. It is amazing how much has changed in the last month plus, for Mike McCarthy to not be coming back, Brian Schottenheimer, the Jerry Jones not doing press conferences at the Combine, and for the Cowboys to flip triggers to get cash into free agency. This is uncharted. I have no idea what the Cowboys are going to do here. I don't. It's tomorrow. The next 2 weeks are going to be crazy as a Cowboy fan. Alrighty, good people, as always, we appreciate you. Don't forget, 5 o'clock today, we'll have our members call-in show, and it'll get interesting. We know we'll have Momo in here as well as Leo, our resident haters and things. But I can't wait to get your guys' take on how you're feeling going into free agency.